Welcome, Holly. So
Hey.
this is KDH counseling, but I'm doing something called Leaning into Therapy. So it's a podcast where I interview therapists, where they talk about whatever they're into. So typically a good therapist always has something they're really into, or something that they're excited about and that they're learning, because that's what our job's all about, right?
Definitely.
And yeah, so today I have Holly French. Holly, can you tell us
Hey.
a little bit about yourself? Yeah.
Yes. I am a licensed professional counselor, a registered art therapist. I've been in practice about 15 years, or maybe a little more than that now. And I just recently started doing a little something new. So I think that's what we're going to try to talk a little bit more about. But like you said, I love learning. I love new things. I'm always looking for different ways to heal and usually involves some kind of creativity in whatever I do.
Well, and I'm curious. So, how did you get into therapy originally?
Yeah.
15 years ago, like what led you here?
So I've always been interested in trying to help people in some way, shape, or form. That was part of my training in my family. Growing up, I was the one taking care of everybody. So, or at least emotionally. But when I got into college, it just wasn't really sitting right with me. So the classes weren't really speaking to me. I couldn't figure out what exactly how I wanted to do it. And so I ended up graduating with an English degree instead. And I went into social services in Chicago, and I started working as a respite worker for special needs kids and their families.
Wow.
And one of my favorite clients had an art therapist, and I had never heard of that before. And I thought, art and therapy? What? This is amazing. Because I had also had a minor in psych, and I had a minor in studio art in college. So those were always a part of my thing. And I always made art for my own healing growing up. So when I heard those two words together, it was like a light bulb went off.
So, what
Um,
kind of art did you do? I did not know this about you, the art
yeah.
part.
Well, so growing up, it was mostly painting and anything with clay, Play-Doh, clay, whatever I had at the time. And then I got more into drawing in college. That was like kind of my favorite thing. And then nowadays I do a lot of painting. I do a lot of watercolor, but I also like mixed media stuff. So involving like collage with paint, with drawing, just kind of lots of different elements. So yeah.
Recently, so I love art too. I have a history of, I don't know, I took pottery in college. I'm not good at it. I loved it, but I was not good at it. There were people that were amazing. It was not me. It was fun though, the clay and stuff. I really enjoyed that. But since then, I just recently discovered, I think it's called encaustic. It's like this wax paint. Do you know what I'm talking about? And you like heat it, because I love fire. I haven't done it yet though, but I bought everything.
Really neat.
Yeah, it sounds fun. Kind of like,
about it.
yeah, mixed media-ish. But I do think that creativity informs. It's interesting. It informs how you did therapy once you discovered the link.
Yeah. So, I mean, I immediately went and interviewed this art therapist and was like, tell me everything about art therapy. What is this? How can I get trained? And I was really fortunate that I happened to be in Chicago at the time, because they had 2 art therapy master's programs to choose from, which is not common.
No.
So yeah, I mean, everything just sort of fell into place, and been going with that ever since.
So since that time, because now you're starting something new. So since that time, you're known as an art therapist in town. That is kind of what you do. And you specialize in trauma. But now you're moving into this other area. What triggered that? How did that kind of?
Yeah, so that had a lot to do with my own personal development and growth, especially over the last couple years. So I've been doing a lot of work dealing with like codependent behaviors that I learned in childhood over the years. And then that kind of morphed into learning more about women and oppression and the patriarchy and all of these expectations, I think that not just women, but mothers in particular carry because we're taught them in our society, and we've internalized a lot of it. So we feel like we're responsible for the world in a lot of ways with our kids, our families, whoever needs anything, anytime. It feels like we're required to say yes.
Well, it's how we're socialized.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
it's reinforced, like you get a pat on the back, if you're a bossy woman, it's not considered like the best, right?
Exactly.
So give a better explanation of what codependency is, because
yeah,
I know what it is, but I don't know if others.
No, I think that's a really good point. Codependency has a lot to do with not being okay if others around you are not okay. So basically, if others in our lives are struggling emotionally or with anything, we've been conditioned or we've learned that we are really good at fixing problems. And so we want to jump in and we want to fix, because not only have we been, like you said, getting pats on the back for it, but we're also really emotionally uncomfortable when other people are in distress. And so if we can fix it, we feel better too. So it's like a double win. It's like, okay, I can help you feel better. I can get my pat on the back from you. I feel like we've made this connection, or that you need me, or that that I have some kind of purpose, and I feel better emotionally because I'm no longer in distress.
Well, and the way I describe it in here is I'll say this is like codependency. I actually say this is enmeshment, but enmeshment just is a more severe version of codependency. And then this is where we want to be, but it's not really, especially in our culture, South Louisiana, I feel like we're not trained or taught to be this way. And it even feels uncomfortable when you're doing it.
Right.
It can feel mean. I don't know. It feels wrong when you start doing this. Like, I don't know. It just feels wrong. It does.
Yeah. And that's the ingrained conditioning, right? The learning that we've been through. It's like, this is what it means to be a good family member. This is what it means to be a good woman or a good sister or a good mother, is that we put all our stuff aside and we take care of those in our lives. And if we're not doing that, if we're saying no when someone's in need, then we're looked at like we're selfish and cruel and bad.
Bossy, dominant. There's all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean,
bad words too.
Exactly. So yeah, it can be really uncomfortable and hard to start pulling that apart. And having a more defined sense of self that can exist outside of my value, my worth coming from helping other people.
I love this. And so since this is what you're being called to do, how are you going to facilitate or create, what are you creating around this?
Yeah. Well, so it's led me to develop a whole nother kind of system or strategy to try to help women, in particular mothers, who are trying to juggle helping, raise a family and then also working outside the home. So I think that is a particularly strong combo where a lot of that socialized, conditioned stuff comes to a head. And myself, a lot of my friends that are moms, clients that have been moms, I hear over and over, we're exhausted all the time. We're exhausted. We feel like we've lost ourselves. We feel like we're underappreciated. We feel like there's no end in sight, and that this is just the way it is. And so that's what I started really getting frustrated with, is this feeling of like, this is just supposed to be the way it is, and we're supposed to be happy about this, and feel grateful, right? That we're mothers and we could be mothers, and there is a lot to be grateful for. Don't get me wrong, but when you couple that with that codependency, that always feeling like you have to be responsible for other people and that your needs are never a priority, then it becomes unsustainable. And so I wanted to find a way to bring some of the learning and the growth that I've been through in the last few years to other moms, in a way that feels, in a way that kind of gives them the support that they need to go through that, because it is really hard. It's really uncomfortable in a lot of ways. We have to work through our own guilt. We have to work through other people's reactions to what we're doing in ways that we're changing. And so I wanted to have a way of creating support around that, but I also wanted to make sure that there were things we could do to tap into and kind of rediscover each person's sense of self. So for me, what's always been helpful with that is making art. And so of course, that's what I bring to this this new business as well, is we've got to get creative. If we're not doing something creative, then we're not having that time and that space to really discover what we like, what we don't like, what our passions are, you know, how we could visualize our life being different. Because they're all the same part of the brain, right? So when we're creating something and we're accessing that part of our brain that helps us to solve problems, it helps us visualize things in a different way. And when we're not doing that, it's so much harder for us to see, how could life be different? How could I maybe have, you know, these things that I love about my life, as well as setting some limits or some boundaries and time and space for myself, so that I have my own interests and passions as a priority, as well as the things, you know, my family and my whatever work I love to do.
Well, and so how are you going to facilitate this? Because
Yeah.
is it a class? Is it a group? I don't know. Is it individual?
Okay, so right now what I have to offer is a 5-day kind of get your feet wet challenge that is going to be, the next one's going to be the end of September. And basically there's live videos with me where we talk about a different topic each day. I have a creative prompt, actually usually do 2. So you have a choice depending on what materials you might have available to you or what your preferences are. And then some prompts to reflect afterwards, and kind of get people started in investing some time for themselves each day, feeling how good it can feel when you do that. And then the week ends with a live group session. So those are more individualized, kind of class-like. And the last day is a live group session where we get to reflect on what came up and what were some of the challenges, what are some of the things that feel important to carry out beyond this. What do you want to take with you? That kind of thing. So that's the 5-day. And then the other thing that I'm offering is actually a much more in-depth experience, and it's less like a course and more like kind of a guided journey. So I'll have it's going to be a group course. Well, I don't want to call it a course. It's not a course, a group experience, right? And other moms will be included in that, and it's an open group, so people will be at different stages in their journey, which I think is really important, because we get feedback from those who've been in it for a little bit longer, and that helps to encourage some that are just starting out.
That's making me think of DBT, which I know this is not technically a counseling group, but I think that model is just such a good and successful model, right? People come in, you get to see the ones that have more time in the group. I mean, just experience, it's proven.
It's proven. And so I've gone through similar groups myself, and I felt like that was one of the most important elements. Because anytime you want to take yourself on some kind of a transformation or a personal growth journey, if you don't have any kind of sense of, you know, the efficacy of it, like how well is this really going to play out? Like, what am I doing this for? Just like hoping, that something might happen. And then to have other people be able to show you, through their own experiences, what's come up for them and what they've been able to get out of it really helps like invigorate and enliven your own journey, your own experience.
Oh yeah.
And so there'll be a combination of things from, and all of these things are online, by the way. So because I really felt like, as busy as we are as moms, there's no way that we're all gonna be, I mean, there is a way maybe, but rarely do we find the time to all get together at the same time of day, the same, you know what I mean? So
no, that actually
barrier out of it completely. And if you are not able to attend live, it'll all be recorded. You can view it later.
I love that.
Yeah. So
I have to say, Holly, this is one of the beauties of COVID, right? Like so many things were this way and so much easier to attend, or if you missed it, to watch it. I mean, it just access is like, I think that's a really good, I like that you're doing it this way. Yeah. And it can be people outside of Louisiana. It doesn't have to just be
anyone anywhere in the world. Yeah. Yeah. So so there'll be some video or live experiences. There'll be some experiences that I'll send out to each person to do kind of each week. Basically a little, it'll be kind of similar to that 5-day program. There'll be some art making, there'll be some journal prompts to reflect on, but then there'll also be some, challenges about, okay, where are you spending all your time? How do you spend every minute of the day? Because what moms especially, but I think a lot of women, I hear them saying, is that there's never enough time. We don't have time. And so when someone presents us with an opportunity, it's like, I wish I had time to do that for myself.
I know, but I'm a therapist of lots of moms, but that's the issue, right? It's like, how do we problem solve? Because I love looking at behaviors. How do we problem solve that so they can have a different life?
Right.
Because that is the issue.
Right. And there's no doubt.
Solution.
Right. There's no doubt that our time is spent doing a lot of things, and that when we're saying yes to everything, inevitably there will be very little time left. So it's a combination of seeing how are things actually right now, and if we were to change certain things in the day to look a little bit more balanced or feel more fulfilling, what would that look like? And so there's going to be that type of thing is going to be sprinkled in, because I do want to have those elements of education there, because that's part of what I bring to the table. I have this training, I have this background, and a lot of other people out there don't, who are trying to offer these types of experiences. So
agreed. And I want to yes, and I want to talk about it, because we are so trained, right? We go to college, we have to be supervised, and then we get this beautiful experience. It's the experiential experience in session, repeatedly, over and over again, like trying to understand people and help them. And so I feel like that makes you so qualified to do this in a way that most people aren't, And the other piece of it, I think too, is that it's for the worried well. It's for people who are doing fine. It's just, they want to enrich their life. They want to have more meaning, or they want something a little different. So it's for everyone.
It is. And I think, it's great if you've had some time to do some therapy, because I think you'll have experience with kind of doing a little bit more reflective work and thinking about, what's not working in your life versus what is. I also, because I have such a background in working with trauma, that's another lens that I'm bringing to this. It's not that I'm treating trauma directly, but that I know that trauma exists in everyone's lives in some way, shape, or form. And so when that becomes part of the obstacle to moving on to the next thing, then we're going to talk about that. Well, what would healing that look like? What are options for that? Because a lot of what what our barriers end up being is not just the stuff that we're like taught, but also all these wounds we carry. And especially, you know, how they affect the way we see ourselves. You know, if we feel like we're not as capable, or we feel others don't see us as being effective in certain areas of our lives, or we just carry a lot of pain from past things. So,
It's
you know,
it's that relational piece. You're like looking at that relational trauma. It could be, or
yeah,
just,
it could be that, or it could just be yeah, I think largely it's relational trauma that comes up with this. Um, but yeah, trauma affects us in so many different levels that I feel like if you don't have that lens, then you're missing a huge piece of what holds us back sometimes.
agreed. And I want to say this, you know, a lot of people that will come in here and they're like, yeah, but I talked about it before, you know, but it's still in their body. And so
Yeah,
doing the right trauma work to really, just because your head thinks it's done, it might still be affecting you.
right,
And you're able to direct people in that way. If it is like, this is
right.
definitely trauma, you definitely need to see a therapist to address, you know.
Yeah, and there's no shame. Excuse me, there's no shame in that. You know, just to be able to like normalize that that's a part of the journey. Um, for so many of us.
Myself included. I'm still
Yeah,
doing
me
trauma
too.
work. I'm like, how can there be anything left inside of me? But there still is.
I know. Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
It never ends. But I mean, that's part of I think that's part of the fulfillment too, right? You know, as you continue to do your own trauma work, your own therapy, your own personal development, is that so much more becomes accessible in your life. So much like more, there's so much more space for connection. There's so much more space for beauty. There's so much more space for feeling alive. And so while it can be tough, it's so rewarding.
Agreed. Those subtleties, like I was thinking recently, it used to be like these giant rocks I was taking out of me,
Yeah.
you know, but now it's like these little pebbles that are like stuck in the
Mhm.
corner. And I'm like, what is that? And I'm just fine tuning it. And so then I will have like, I look at my pet and I like love my pet even more. It's weird. I look at
Yes.
my nieces and I'm like, well, I don't want to let go of them. And they're like, Nanny, teenagers, you know, I'm like, oh, I love y'all so much. It's just interesting how it plays out, those
Yeah.
subtleties, you know?
No, I think it's really cool. I mean, that's part of that's the nerd in me, I guess, you know?
Definitely. Well, and
Yeah.
I think it's a needed thing, like the support piece I really like about your group. Steph, I was watching something last night. We won't talk about that, but I was thinking, you know, the power of having a tribe or having a group of people you can get together with who get it, who are like you. It's just,
Yeah.
it's very powerful.
Yeah. And I think for women, what I have experienced in my life is that the spaces that we have for that are very limited. So there's, well, for moms, I know that when you seek out support as a mom, a lot of times what you get is a group of complaining moms who self-medicate with wine and coffee, and that becomes normalized. And so there's this culture of, again, this is just the way it is. And if we want to have some time to feel like connected, we got to connect over the, you know, the complaining about the partners or the kids, or how awful we feel at the end of the day. And it just feels so toxic to me. And so that was another thing. It was like, I really want women to feel like we can have a space that's healing, and we can come together and lift each other up. Because to go back to kind of what I talked about earlier, I know in my life, I've experienced a lot of that kind of internalized sexism, where I've had, you know, distrust of women. I've had to overcome feeling like I could have good, meaningful relationships with a lot of women. For the longest time, I thought, I had, my one best friend who's a girl, and I thought, well, she's the exception to the rule, right? That
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. I didn't have a lot of positive experiences with other girls growing up. So it framed, it had that impact that had, but plus a lot of things we hear about, well, if we're going to be successful in the world, if we're going to be, have a career, we've
Mhm.
got to be able to fit in male dominated spaces. And because I had older brothers, I felt like, oh, I know how to do that, right? Like I'm really good at that. And so I would
Mhm.
focus everything on fitting in and proving myself.
So interesting. This is the culture of women, but women who are, because I'm like you in a lot of ways, women who are, I don't want to say we're feminists. I guess I am, but I'm more guy-like in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Even when I'm around men in my office, I'm like, okay, so yeah, this, blah, blah, blah. I
Yes.
get how their brains work, but I never thought about it, I guess, as the way I was socialized. So
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I know there's other factors to it. I'm not trying to say that that's all that it is, but I do feel like, think about it. Like if you're in a society that's male dominated, you have two options basically. You either try to get into the boys club and fit in with them, or you try to stay in your place as a woman, doing the things that women have traditionally done.
Right,
And
which is not me. This is so
no,
interesting. I
it's
know.
not me either. But what I have found is that I don't necessarily want to stay in that, like proving myself to other men world either, because that doesn't feel like me. So I'm kind of having this coming back around and embracing, kind of my own inner femininity, because what I feel like, what I really, really believe, and what's driving a lot of my passion with this group is that I think that women are the answer to a lot of the world's problems.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like we've kind of seen what happens when men are in charge for a long period of time. It's not really working for us. And it's not. I mean,
Oh,
our world is like, it's
I know.
exploding, imploding, whatever you want to say. And so, I just find that we naturally have the capacity to do so much good in terms of empathy, and we have always been the healers.
Mhm.
Um, and so I feel like there's got to be a way that if we can all kind of start tapping more into that inner sort of feminine wisdom that we carry,
Mhm.
rather than ignoring it and pushing it away because we want to be more like the boys club, um, in my experience, then we are able to tap into some power that we haven't had.
Well,
Ah,
it is making me think of Wise Mind. It is like Wise Mind and DBT, because it's
yeah,
like,
you
you
got to
know,
find the middle.
right. It's not, Wise Mind is this way of looking at things, which I'll just kind of explain
Yeah,
quickly, where you look at your rational mind and you look at your emotional mind and you kind of choose something in the middle, which is your
yeah,
wise mind. And so a lot of times, even when I explain it to people, they're like, okay, my rational mind is blah, blah, blah. Like that's their wise mind, because I think
yeah,
rational mind is probably more masculine.
it is.
And for some people that are emotional, it is good for them to access it. But I
Yeah,
just think, the marriage of the two is such a good way to look at it, even for men. Because again,
absolutely.
in the male culture, a lot of times they're not socializing the way we are. It's
Right.
hard for them to come and ask for help, like all these things that are essential.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not anti-man in any way. I think that
Agreed.
the patriarchy damages men just as much as it does
Agreed.
women.
Agreed.
So yeah, I think it is all about kind of being able to come back to more of a balance, so that all people can access that feminine and masculine energy, or those sides of themselves, and get the best they can out of that. Because I think when we're able to feel that balance within us, it helps us to be more in alignment in everything that we do.
Well, and it probably would help moms to say no.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
that's, I hate to say that's more masculine, but it is kind of in a way like, no, I
Yeah.
can't do that. I need some
Well,
time.
yeah, when men say no, they're not demonized, right? They're not like
No.
thought of as being selfish in every situation, right? So that is seen as, you know, a skill and a positive trait in most men, especially in the workforce, right?
Mhm.
But even in relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I remember one point, this was like 8 years ago, I guess, maybe 10. I don't know, but I was like hardcore, like, it's okay for me to say no. It's okay for people not to like me. It's because I am naturally dominant, but I had that whole developmental trauma later of like, that makes me unlovable in some way if I am just who I naturally am, because I've
Right.
always been like this, like just since I was a teenager. I think
Yeah.
even before then, like there's just some things that maybe we're just biologically more predisposed for, and then we're socialized, you know.
Yeah.
But this is a very interesting piece. And so the ultimate goal, the ultimate hope for you with this group is that women will have less shame,
Hmm.
be able to assert themselves more,
Hmm.
and take care of themselves. I mean, what's the
Yeah, I think it's a lot of that. So it's having less shame around their own wants and needs, um, being able to assert themselves and you know, communicate boundaries effectively. And it's also about um, developing the habits of setting aside time for yourself every day, um, to be creative, to have some introspective time, to reflect, and then to take action towards whatever vision starts to come out of that. So when you start to have that time and that space, the first thing is usually you're met with this kind of internal conflict because you're realizing there are certain aspects of your life that really aren't feeling so great, that you would rather not think about probably, or you know, not want to confront. And then that's tough. And then you get to this phase of like, okay, I'm doing some of this stuff, it's feeling really good. How do I sustain that? um, and then kind of starting to realize, well, if I were to continue this further in my life, wow, what amazing things I could do with that. Like, oh, I remember that I wanted to,
Mhm.
you know, do this thing. I always used to want to do this thing and I just forgot about that. I haven't thought about that in years. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I need to do that. Of course you do. Like those seeds have been planted in us for a reason. And we all have these
Mhm.
special qualities and gifts to bring. So that shouldn't go away just because we become moms, right? It's
Right.
and I mean, I love being a mom and I love my time with my kids and my family. And I really, really, really need alone time. And I really need that space to be creative so that I um, can think about these things that we're talking about, so that I can develop ideas and programs and whatever it is that I want to do. But that
I
wouldn't be possible if I didn't have that space and time.
agreed. I look at it like, you know, I love the little pie chart, and
Yes.
moms or I think the culture around it too is that we should all be okay and happy with just the mom role.
Yes.
Mom caregiver, and you might have a little work in there or maybe a bit of time with your friends, but that should be
Yes.
enough.
That's it. You should be really happy with that.
Yes. And the
Yeah.
truth is, most women are not fulfilled. They need more. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean they're like bad moms or any of that. I
No.
just think they just need
These
a
are
little
human
extra.
beings.
Yes. It's just one piece of like several. You're a
Yes.
wife, you're a mom, you're a best
Yes.
friend, and you're you.
Yeah.
And you're talking about developing like almost like a habit for that you space.
Yes. Yeah.
I
And I
really
mean,
love this.
I think there's a lot that's been put out in terms of like self-care and being positive and developing healthy habits. And I think all those things are great, but I also think they tend to skew us in this direction of kind of, you're doing it wrong. Like you just have to do this and then your life
Mhm.
will be better. When I really don't want to go anywhere near that. I don't want there to be this, you're doing this wrong. I really want it to be like, you have the answers inside of you. And when you create this space, you will know what to do.
Well, yeah. So it's just it's deepen your connection with yourself. So you know if you got some big pebbles to remove or some little
Right.
ones, or if it's just about your habits. No, this totally makes sense. I think your insight as a therapist is going to be great for the participants, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just feel like there's always a place for knowledge and research and data. And I want to always balance that with the intuitive, the emotional, the introspective. I mean, you talk about wise mind. Like, I feel like that my process in learning DBT and practicing those skills has been a big part of this journey for me. Right? It's like I noticed that, when you find out something's not really working, I have this tendency to just go like to the complete opposite side, right? It's like, okay, that's not working, so I'm going to do everything the opposite in extreme ways. And then it's like, oh wait, that doesn't work either. Okay, we have to find the middle. So yeah, I think that there's a lot right now, especially with the way things are in the world, going through this pandemic and all of the trauma as moms that we've been through, trying to figure out how we keep our kids safe, how we deal with school at home and working, and getting through all the major pieces of that. And now being in this world that is so divided, it's so like high conflict all the time. People are afraid to talk about what they really feel or think, and they don't know if they're going to be in a mixed crowd of people who are going to feel totally opposite from them. And it's just become so polarized that I think people really are looking for that middle.
Well, and then they're isolated. I mean, even as you say it, I'm like, it's just increasing the isolation of moms. I mean, it is. I socialize less. I'm trying to get out more, but I'm having to consciously
Yeah.
again.
And there's even so much criticism and judgment between moms. It's just sort of like, oh, you're doing it that way? Well, oh, I would never do that. It's
I know.
Yeah. So my heart is just, it's heavy for all of the moms that are feeling so isolated. And I really want to create that feeling of we're in this together. We can get ourselves through it. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
That's one of my favorite. I always say it when I started hiring people to work with me. I think we're better together than we are alone. And I'm like, I started learning that early on, like when I was trying to find people and it wasn't working or whatever, right? But that idea that the more I interview people, I do believe that 100%. And I think that group is such a great experience for people to know that.
Yeah.
Support.
And hopefully down the road, we can do some in-person retreat stuff. I would love to have that be an element. Yeah. Because I think it's great when you can do things on Zoom. And then I think if we can get to a place where we have created some more space and time for ourselves, and we can say no, and we can plan a weekend where it's just about us, that we can do that kind of thing. So hopefully that'll be there in the future.
Oh, I'm going to send some people. I'm excited. So thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I love what you're doing. I think it's good. It's based on so many things, like your own personal experience, your experience in work, and then what you feel called to do, that whole emotional creative piece. I just love that. So thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.